Call a meeting to order, please.
Arthur's been
Rise for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We'll take a roll call, please.
Wonderjum.
Here.
Tybor.
Here.
Buck. Here. Gardine.
Here.
Palmer. DeHaan.
Here.
Klein.
Here. Please note, as a courtesy to members of the audience and the Board of Education, to silence your cell phone, please. Are there any more public comment cards? All right, moving on. Can I get an approval of the agenda?
So moved.
Support.
All in favor?
Yes.
Opposed? All right. Reports. Let's start on this end. Brent?
I've got no reports, just looking forward to the,
Yeah.
I guess, fall sports getting started and getting back to seeing all the kids together again.
Yeah, makes sense.
That's it.
Nothing.
Great.
Just a splendid 4th of July. And hats off to Ryan for gathering momentum to put one of the buses in the parade. And that was fun to see them and the band. And so, as usual, well attended and definitely a lot of help from the school district too, just to make sure things were going well. And other than that, just the summer programs, from what I know, were outstanding again.
Absolutely.
And attendance was really up for some of the sports. And so all was good.
Great. Thanks, Chrissy. Amy?
Well, from the Parks and Recs Department, the Police in the Park program is going full force. It's awesome. They were able to give out through the parks and a partnership with the finances through the parks, they were able to give students and kids in Grandville 75 baseball bats during one of their outings. They have food, they have backpacks, they have little badges. I mean, it's just it's been a really positive program. I'm really happy to see it's getting more and more and more attended to. So it's been a very positive thing. They have 2 new cadets that are women, and they are loving their position, and the pictures are on the Parks and Recreation Board and on the Grandville Police Department board, and it's so fun because they're all sitting up on the monkey bars with the kids, and it's been really good. The 4th of July, I was there too, and it was really great, and I loved the Be Nice group. It was fun to have my 13-year-old walk in there with his best friend in the Be Nice group, so thank you for letting him be a part of that. Our varsity hockey with Joel Brazil this whole week, they've decided to take on a junior high clinic this whole week, so there must have been 30 7th and 8th graders entering 7th and 8th graders who were on the ice this morning, learning skills, and then getting all of that good Joel Brazil integrity, grit, how we work, how we do things. And then we probably had about 10 students from out of our school district who are considering coming to play in our district. So that program is a great program for building our sports program, building really great students who come in. All today was about community and grade point average, and he doesn't pull any punches. He's like, you have to have good grades.
Joel is a force.
Yeah, so it's been a real pleasure. It's been a really great pleasure for me to be a part of that program, but this week was nice because it's in the summer and you're like, oh, and we're also cold. It's good.
Yeah.
So that's what I've got this week.
That's great. Thank you. Good report.
Nothing major, just kind of like what I said earlier. It was nice to have all the graduation stuff done, and all the parties are beyond us now, so that's great. Looked like really good attendance to a lot of the youth camps that we had over the last couple of weeks, which is great. It's just as Brent said, right? It's exciting to have the fall stuff start up. I know band camp starts here in a couple of weeks, and pre-band camp starts at the beginning of a week and a half, and then band camp's a week after that. And here we go. Buckle up.
That's right.
New school year upon us.
That's great. And thank you again to your wife for all of her
Yeah.
hard work and dedication with the bands. That's a big, big job every time I see her. I have to say it because I'm aware. A lot of kids in the band still do. Not a lot for me. There hasn't been much going on. I've just been out of town really for work in the last few weeks, but really grateful and thankful that
you get an opportunity, Roger, to take a respite, and also been thinking a lot about our teachers as they, and our support staff as they've had some time off. They usually spend, much of June decompressing and July starting to, this is when I remember in education, your mind starts to think, oh, what could I do this year? And so I know they're starting to ramp up and get ready for the school year, and I just got a lot of thoughts with them right now as they start to prepare for all that. And then our community ed program's just been hearing phenomenal stuff from the community about what we've been doing this summer. So thanks to everyone who puts into that program. Roger.
Sure. Great stuff happening. I'm going to talk a little more back to school update further along in the agenda. So just excited for a new school year. Really looking forward to it. And yeah, let's roll.
Let's do this. Wonderful. All right, we have no old business. On to the consent action agenda. Can I get a motion to approve the consent action agenda?
Support?
All in favor?
Yes.
Opposed? That carries. On to regular action. We have one regular action item. It is the formal complaint book review. It is recommended the Board of Education approve the recommendation of the Book Complaint Review Committee for the selection Milk and Honey as part of the appeal process brought forth. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Support.
Sure. So per board policy 9130, letters F and G, if somebody makes a formal complaint on what's called an instructional material, library books are considered that, then the principal, after consulting with that person, may form a committee. And in this case, Adam did, and Scott formed a committee, and they're going to talk to you about that process. But where we're at right now is after the committee made a decision, the person who filed the complaint has a right to appeal it, and then the board needs to make a decision whether they're going to recommend the recommendation or not, and then present that to the person in writing after that. So I will turn things over to Dr. Merkel, and he'll talk to you a little bit about the process.
Right over here, Walter. Thank you. So I'm going to go through the process. I know all of you have seen the committee's formal recommendation that was put together that Mr. Barrett shared. So I want to go over the process that we went through following Board Policy 9130 to set up that committee, and then the process the committee followed to make that recommendation. So again, I know this is somewhat repetitive, but I think it's important that we focus on that policy. The policy creates broad guidance. The principal may appoint a committee, so in consultation, when that happens, principal calls me, we talk about if this is necessary, worthy to form a committee. We felt that it was. And Board Policy 9130 says that committee may consist of one or more professional staff members and then one lay persons knowledgeable in the area. That's it is broad guidance. Our goal, looking at that, was to create a committee process that was highly representative of stakeholders. We didn't want to make this decision in a vacuum. We didn't want to create a committee that was isolated or without voice. So we created a 7-person committee that included building administration, in this case a high school assistant principal, as Adam and I facilitated the process together. And then 3 professional staff members, the English department, an English department staff member, in this case department chair, a non-English department staff member, and a non-instructional staff member. And then we randomly selected 3 parents to serve on the committee, 3 parents of high school students. This was a high school library text, and so we wanted representation from that student body. That parent selection process was truly random. I went into PowerSchool, pulled an Excel spreadsheet of all the active students in the high school. Excel automatically gives them a line number. And then I went to a random number generator, clicked generate. I highlighted that name and sent that parent an invitation. We gave that parent a couple of days to accept or decline before we invited somebody else. And we did have some. We had a couple that just said, no thanks. I don't have time right now. It was a busy time. And so that's how we put those 3 parents together. Then obviously, we provided background to the committee. We actually had a Zoom meeting to overview the process and go over policy, make sure they understood policy, what their role was, and the perspective that they needed to have reviewing the text, and then we needed to get everybody the book and give them time to read the book. So each committee member read the book in its entirety. They took notes on merits and concerns of the book. I asked all the committee members to submit their notes to me without names on them. I put them together for everybody to see, so the whole committee could see what everybody else noted as concerns, merits of this text, and then we had a meeting, and we used some dialogue protocols to focus on what people noted as their merits and concerns in a way where they could still remain anonymous and ask questions about what people meant and share what resonated, because you could see everybody else's thoughts, so they could pull out patterns about what people had patterns and concerns about, what people had patterns of merits about. We discussed that. We had conversation, opportunity for everybody to ask questions, and then committee members voted anonymously using a rubric that everybody saw, and they were given 3 options. Option number 1 was we remove the book. Option number 2 is we retain the book as is. Option number 3 is we retain the book with restrictions, and those restrictions would be up to conversation. And in the end, as you've seen, this committee voted unanimously 7-0 to maintain the book in its current location for its current purpose. Just a bit of rationale. I did ask them for what their rationale was as a committee, what they felt the committee needed to be included in the recommendation. And they shared that while some of the content could be objectionable to some families, the issues depicted were real and experienced by many in our society, so they saw it as valuable. As a book, again, they also felt that it was important. Their decision hinged on the fact that this is choice reading. As a book that's available only by choice reading, they felt it reasonable to keep the book accessible in the student library and leave discretion to families regarding the boundaries of selection of that. So, and it is, to note, and this was a main component, it's currently available as a selection in our library. It's not a book that's involved in a class or anything else. So that's our process, the process we went through, and then just wrapping up 9130 in the process. My role is to create an official summary recommendation and submit it to superintendent, which we did, and then we passed along to all of you. So, questions about the process?
Very thorough. I commend you
Yeah,
on it. Yeah.
thank you. How many parents did you have to send invitations out to get your 3?
For this book, 8.
When is the last time we had to use this process?
2003. Captain Underpants.
Any other questions? All right. Thank you so much for your time. Let's take a vote on whether...
I'm sorry, I thought we were just going to talk, I thought it was questions on process, because I'd
no,
like
sure.
to be able to discuss some other pieces of this. And I read all your documentation that you gave, Raj, so thank you very much for, especially the legal opinion. So I look at this from a different perspective. And I think there needs to be a different, I'm going to say, category of libraries, right? So K-12, I think, needs to be separated from public, KDL, or a university library. Because I think we have minors. And I don't know if the expressions, especially that I got in the summary here, I would want anybody under the age of 18 to be able to read. I wouldn't want them to have access to it. And if, I can play with a lot of similarities. I mean, you look at, what is obscenity, right? By either state law or the Supreme Court. And the only thing that runs into question based on the summary is the artistic value. I have to do double quotes. Because I think, I don't know, I've never read the book, never seen the movie, but do we have 50 Shades of Grey in a library? Do we have any Hustler magazines in the library? Because someone must have some artistic value in there. So I'm actually putting this book with that genre. I haven't read the book. I don't want to read the book. Summary is enough for me. So from my perspective, whether they're selective or not, we have a selective section or not, my perspective is we shouldn't even have a selective section. If we don't have a universal reading for all grades, and you can get different levels based on the grade set, then when you hit anything above NC 17, it should not be in a school library. Because I think you are going across the line of obscenity, pornography, and overall decency.
I mean, my comments on it, I've read the book. I completely agree with the theme of the book. I feel it's too graphic in nature of what it has to say. I've shared with some people that somebody pretty close to me in my life has dealt with that, and it's impacted my whole life. But I would still say that I just wouldn't want it for kids under 18.
So my daughter did choose to read it in her class, and she was actually able to draw a parallel for her where she had done 2 mission trips and gone into some very poor areas of Kentucky, and one of the girls had gone through a very traumatic experience like this, right? And that was shared with her. And after that mission trip, she's always been a very empathetic person. And this allowed her to understand the plight, the experience of this person without herself having it, right? And so much so that she asked for the book as a gift, and has it. And I think, to me, that speaks to a little bit of some of what was mentioned in the feedback, meaning that some of the feedback was, if the book doesn't speak to you, you're going to drop it after 3 sentences. And I think there's a lot of truth in that when you read the book. It's a powerful book, I think. I think it in some ways, it teaches a healthy approach for women to understand themselves a little bit, and gives them a view to be able to see themselves maybe in a different light than what's normally portrayed. And I got to say, I think the process that you put together really does reach out and look for both, obviously administration and teachers, because they are the ones that are spending so much time with their kids, to understand what their view is of this book. I mean, they are. They're in the school year, they're spending more time with their kid than we are, unfortunately, right? I mean, we'd like it to be the opposite. We'd like to be able to spend, 8 hours a day with our kids, but we can't. So they, I think, understand that they get a lot more probably conversation on some of these things than when we as parents do, unfortunately. And I love the fact that, hey, we reached out to the community and look for just as many community members to look at it. And yeah, I mean, it's how much more, to me, it was just a really good process and a very good representation of what we're looking for, right? And how we want to approach these. Because yeah, I agree with you, right? You know, with a Hustler magazine, I think, I couldn't say verbatim, right? But I would believe a Hustler magazine would not pass this process. Would 50 Shades of Grey pass this process? I don't think so. Can't say that for sure. But I think if we're gonna use them as examples, right? They wouldn't pass this process. So I do think this book is different in how it's approaching and the way it does it. That's just my view, right? I mean, I found it a quick read. It was about an hour. But like I said, I think it does speak to some people. And just as like the comment said, if it's not for you, you're not going to get past the first 3 sentences. I think that's with so many books.
Any other comments?
I do. I just wanted to wait until you guys are done. So I just want to go back to a statement I made before, and this is one of the things I'll mention in our back to school update. But we are living in different times, and some of these books that are being questioned have been in our library for a long time, and but times are different. And what I hear from what's going on around the country with this is the importance of, looking at our system and being transparent. I think we need to strengthen our transparency when books come into our library and have a strong process for that. And at the same time, find ways so that parents know, we can give parents grades at the drop of a hat. So if we can find a way to let them know that, what books their kids are checking out with the current books we have and have a more transparent process in that, I think that also is something that we need to look at and and consider. There's a choice. If a parent does not want their kid checking out a book or a certain kind of book, all they have to do is tell us, and we will ensure that we're doing what we can to ensure that kids are not going to be checking. Their kid is not going to check it out. But when you look at a book and you look at situations and scenarios, kind of like what you mentioned, Jason, there are people who will want to, check out certain kinds of books, and we know that because they ask us. So we need to just look at our systems, look at our, how can we be more transparent with the books we have, and how can we look at our system of how books have come into our library over the years, because some of these books being questioned are in the 1990s, and they've been in our library for a long time. So, knowing times are different, how can we strengthen that process when books come in? One thing I think you did tonight, approving a media specialist, helps, because I think that person's going to really help us strengthen that system. Same thing for purging books that are books that are not being checked out and are not are not in that cycle. So we'll be able to look at systems, and we're currently doing that, and we'll continue to do that as we move forward.
One other comment, Raj. Your statement with regard to some books, I don't know how long this has been in our library, I don't need to know. But the fact that they've been in there for years, this goal of transparency is this is an example of why it's needed. Because I will tell you, there's many parents in this district that believe their guard was let down with a level of trust. Somehow they want that trust back. They're trying to figure out how to get it back. They're trying to figure out, hey, we're going to partner with you. They just don't know, are there only certain areas they can partner with you on?
Right.
And I'm going to say they feel that way. Whether that's not the case, I know you, but bringing transparency in a way that is recognizable and noticeable to parents, I think that's key to this process and your goal.
I'd like to make a comment too. There are several books being looked at that you said maybe from the 90s or whatever. This one has been in the library for a long time. And many of them are coming through this organization called Mary in the Library. And so what's happening is little tiny segments of each book are coming out. And instead of reading the entire book in its holistic picture, which was beautiful in this process, because this process really took a very close and intimate look with people asking questions. Everything that was on there, all those things that I questioned. The first time I heard stuff read here, I was like, whoa, okay, let's look at this. So the problem becomes, I am an English teacher. I have a master's in English. I understand that sometimes we have to understand context. And so when Mary in the Library comes in and takes out a tiny snippet to rile up people, it's very frustrating because you have to be able to commit to having a holistic picture of something before you say it's no good. So I read it like you. I read it in like an hour. I read it in the car on the way to a lacrosse game. And the parts that were in there, I think that what we like to talk about is we like to say, our kids are not in school like a factory. We have individual kids. We have kids that are all different. They have different needs, different levels, different spaces. We have kids that are at risk because they have learning disabilities. We have kids that are in AP classes from the time they're a sophomore in high school. We have an entire range of students who have intellectual freedom, and that is one of the biggest things with the ALA, is that we have students that can handle this book. We have students that can't handle this book. We have a lot of students who don't even make it into the library. I have a really great reader. My 13-year-old is a reader. Would I ask him to read this book? Probably not. He's not ready for this. Would I tell my 17-year-old to read this book? You bet, because he needs to understand trauma and he needs to understand those things. All of my opinions aside, I support the fact that we had a very solid process. There's another book that I've seen floating around on Mary in the Library, and I will say, I'm not sure that I would support that book. But the truth is, we went through an entire process. We went through every single page of that book and read it. And there are certain schools that won't even let this process happen until the parent who is complaining has read the whole book, written a report, and talked about what their problems are with that book. So the fact that we had 3 parents picked at random, that we had all of that input from these teachers and our administration, I think that they have done their due diligence in understanding why this book is not porn. So we had a definition of pornography read to us earlier, and it was about gratuitous pleasure. I don't think rape is gratuitous pleasure. And so in order to understand this whole thing, this was a child's story. This was a child making bad decisions in between and then coming out healing. So to me, that is a great process. I like the book, but I also understand that even if I didn't like the book and I saw how this was dictated by our committee, I would still support our committee.
Couple of comments after listening to everyone. First of all, on transparency, we have an online database for our libraries where all books are accessible. Is that correct? Could you talk to us about the name of that database, where it's located on our website, and how parents may access it?
Yes, it's called Follett Destiny, and they can access and search by school. You can find that in our website in the departments tab, and then there's a separate department for library or media center, and you can find the link there. And I would just encourage, because just today we had an email exchange about a book that was actually listed in Destiny that had been weeded out. So we were able to kind of hopefully take that off people's concerns. We weren't sure why. But once again, this evening we approved a staff member who's going to help us clean all that up from a process standpoint.
And Follett Destiny has been on our website for over 10 years. Would that be an accurate
For the
statement?
high school, Follett Destiny has been. Our elementary schools just switched over to Follett Destiny 4 years ago, I think. So we had K-12 articulation and consistency.
All right. And what was the elementary school using prior?
Library World. I don't know the parent company.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And I heard Mr. Wondergen's comments about libraries being set aside from KDL, other purposes. Just to clarify, when the committee had their options for recommendations, it was to remove the book, to retain the book in its current state, or to put it in a separate protected library for
Keep it with restriction.
with restrictions. So
Yeah.
there is a library with restrictions available as an option that the committee could have exercised.
We have some books that are by permission only, typically at the elementary levels. With K-6 elementaries, right, there's no question. There are some books that are appropriate for 5th and 6th grade. I mean, beyond reading level, some content levels, not that they're adult content, it's just
Dystopian
5th and
stuff,
6th grade
yeah,
content that,
yeah.
you know, some great series that are based on Roman gods, right? The Rick Riordan series that I've seen come all through my house. There's just some violence in there.
But to clarify, there was an option to set aside, and they chose not to.
Correct.
do that.
Can I clarify something quick on that? So the point that I got out of removed, retained in a special location was within our Grandville library system, not the KDL or any other public university or anything like that. So just that
Understood.
point of clarification.
Yep, I was just clarifying that we have that as an option here.
No, it's not here.
We have it as an option for our school district, and they opted not to exercise it in the recommendation.
To put it in its Grandville Public Schools library restrictive area. Right.
Yep.
Okay, just want to be on the same page.
I think it's important to read the book. It's important to have context. And I've read the book. And there's a very big difference between smut and titillation and perspective and uncomfortable topics. I believe the committee was clear on both of those. And I really appreciated that they went through and listed every objectionable area, picture, comment with page numbers. Because I read it once a couple weeks ago. I read it again after seeing the recommendation, went to every single page and reread to try to apply that standard of, is this meant to encourage inappropriate behavior, or is it meant to teach about behaviors that hurt people? I thought that was very wise to have the two sides represented in the process and very clear, because it made me think about each and every single item in there that could be objectionable from multiple standpoints. Final thing I want to remind, as we sounds like we are coming to a vote, is the vote is to affirm the committee's recommendation. That is our purpose with the vote tonight.
I also read the book, and I felt exactly what the committee said, and that was issues depicted in the book are real and experienced by many. And sometimes books like this can open up discussions amongst parents with their kids. And I appreciate Jason having that conversation with his daughter to dig a little bit deeper and find out her perspective on it. And I think, you know, we're becoming such a trauma-informed school district that we need to be aware that trauma is there. And it's right here in Grandville. So we can't deny that we have people experiencing this, and building empathy is numero uno.
And just to build on that, just one last thing, I forgot to mention, after, for her, right, it was able to identify this with another person, right, that she had experience with, but also then to see and understand that this trauma that happened from this book, right, it comes out on the other side with hope. And there's healing and there's ability to move on. And you aren't stuck with that trauma and the bad thing that happened to you, like a noose around your neck for the rest of your life. It showed that there's a way to move on and you can still be productive. And I think for her, that was a big thing that spoke to her, is that, hey, I don't have to view this person as someone who's always going to be, quote unquote, damaged. Yeah, not always going to be damaged. There's hope for them to be able to move on and continue to have a positive life. So yeah, it was an interesting discussion.
And as a former language arts teacher, there are numerous studies that show that children who read are more empathetic. And those adults who continue to read continue to be more empathetic. And so I think we talk about a slippery slope when we decide that we're going to go against a recommendation of our learned and very skilled educators who really have had to handle many of these issues.
I also want to add, I think this might be the antithesis to pornography, because it takes a very difficult topic. It's often washed clean of perspective, and it explains the difference. I think for a lot of young girls in our community, and boys, they hear about things. They have way too much access to inappropriate content in this world, and they confuse sex and love. I don't find it humorous. And I'm sorry. And things that occur to them. And that's what I heard in the different stages, was confusion about something that was occurring to them that society tells you should be one thing, but their experience was something else. And how to rectify that in your mind and become a whole and healed person and have positive, productive, healthy relationships in the future. So, any other comments, questions? All right, so we are again voting to affirm the committee's recommendation. A vote yay would affirm the committee's recommendation. A vote nay would go against the recommendation. Let's do roll call.
Okay, Highmore,
Affirm.
Buck, affirm, Gardine,
Affirm.
DeHaan,
No.
Palmer, Wonderjohn,
No.
Klein.
Yes. Yeses have it, and the committee recommendation is approved. Final thing on our agenda is the discussion about back-to-school updates.
Yeah, just, again, very excited about the 22-23 school year. We're gearing up for a great year. A lot of good things are in the works. And I just wanted to mention again, our two focus areas, is to ensure that every student reaches their fullest academic potential. That is the paramount thing we can do for kids when they leave us. When you talk about opportunities and having opportunities in the real world, no matter what they decide to do, that has to be the pinnacle of what we're trying to do with students. And then the second thing is every student who enters our doors, we want them to feel safe. We want them to feel a sense of belonging. This is my school. Confidence, and then having the supports they need, whether it's academic, social, emotional, having the supports needed to reach their fullest academic potential. Some kids don't need any supports. Some kids, you wouldn't think they do, but they do because they're going through a lot, and then other kids need a lot. So it's just really building those bonds, those relationships with our kids, and having the support systems in place to ensure they reach their fullest academic potential. So those two things Also, looking ahead, things we're focusing on, safety I mentioned. We've been managing a pandemic and we really want to, we had some great momentum going into that. And I think recent events have reminded us of how important it is to always look at your systems that you have, your partnerships with your police departments, your local people and so on, and really work together to establish very solid plans, have very solid structural plans for buildings, process, procedures, protocols, at the same time being very proactive with your mental health supports and your programming for that. So safety is a key thing. Teaching and learning, want to focus on curriculum transparency, articulation of what we teach, and really work with our staff to articulate what it is we expect students to know and be able to do within our classes, and then when parents have questions about those things, be able to have that dialogue so there isn't a gap between what we expect students to know and be able to do and what people may or may not think. It doesn't need to be for people, to me, it needs to be very, very evident. It's not trivial at all. So we're going to work hard at a system to strengthen that. We already do that in some ways, but we're in a time of transparency. We're in a time of wanting to articulate that as best as we can. So we're going to continue to focus on that. Also, looking ahead. If you're not looking ahead, you're going to be behind when you get there when we look at facilities. Yes, we have this beautiful middle school going up. We had that tour in June, and people were just wowed by that. We have a Grandville Education Center, an early childhood component to that. That's very exciting, and those are doing things not only for creating exceptional facilities that we're so blessed to have from our community, but at the same time, they help us with spacing issues for a while. But I don't know if you've noticed, there are a lot of places selling off and a lot of people talking about housing. So we have to make sure we're always planning for that, 10, 15 years down the road. And so getting a group of people from our community together to start having some dialogue about that and trends we're seeing and where we're seeing them and what, possibilities for that future, might be, we want to start having those conversations. At the same time, when you look at places like River Bend, and we all know we're in that process now of looking at that information, those are things as well that play into that. So very excited. A wise person once told me, only look at three things, don't look at more than that. So safety, teaching and learning, and future of our facilities. Not that we're not doing a lot of other things, but having those three key areas is what we're going to really be trying to focus on. Any questions about that or anything else? We're getting there. We're going to be turning the corner into August pretty soon here. Very excited about that.
Looking forward to seeing each one of those action areas in the 22-23 school year. Thank you very much.
Yep.
Now is the time in our agenda where we move to public comment. We have 3 individuals who signed up for public comment. Just a reminder that during the public comment time, they're speaking to the board. We are also requesting that you are respectful of one another and that you ensure that the statements that you are making do not violate the rights of others under the laws of defamation or invasion of privacy. And if you have any questions about that, please seek your legal advisor before speaking. Our first individual up will be, you get 5 minutes. Mr. Hebor will take care of time over here and we'll notify you when you have 1 minute. Our first individual up will be Michelle Thomas, followed by Tessa Jansma.
I've had 2 presentations written today. Mr. Merkel was able to talk me off the ledge on one of them, slightly temporarily, and so I prepared something else. And then now, after what I've just listened to, my head is just in a whole nother direction. It's been a while since I've been here. I'm a little mad at myself for that. My kids are busy in spring sports and summer sports, and I don't like to miss that stuff. So I put my priority there. And then it dawned on me, there are going to be more games. There are going to be more activities that I can go to. But they only get one childhood, and they only get one chance at innocence. And so I can't continue to put my priority on things when the chance at something they only get one of could be robbed. It set me off this week when there was a book posted on Facebook in a group that I belong to of 56,000 members. Only a handful of schools were called out. Grandville was one of them for having this book that lots of quotes were in it. It was extremely inappropriate. I right away emailed Roger, Mr. Merkel. This is the one where he said it's showing that it is in our library, but he's assured me it's not. But I was mortified and I was embarrassed, and I know that that's not the only book in the library that would probably make me feel that way. And then we had the discussion here about this book, and I hear a lot of comments. I don't disagree that it's a great book, and does it have a great place in a public library? Absolutely. But we have a wide range of ages in our high school. I have very young children that will be in high school. My son had just turned 14 as a freshman, so he was 1 week past 13. And I know if he would have looked at those drawings in that book, he and his friends, they don't care about what's in the book. They're going to giggle at the pictures. They're going to see things through a different lens because they're 13. They're not 17 or 18 or at a maturity level where they're capable of handling the content of the book. Do I think there are high school students that can handle it? Absolutely. But not all of them. And I don't want my kids seeing that. They weren't ready. My daughter will be 13 when she becomes a freshman in high school. She's very young. She has a September birthday. She will be 13. What is appropriate for a 13-year-old is very different from an 18-year-old. And these books aren't necessary for educational success. I'm going to do a little mom brag. I have 2 straight A students. My son is one of the top PSAT scores in his grade. He's got 5 honors classes, getting straight A's, and he doesn't read this stuff. It is not necessary to become a good student or have academic success to have access to some of this adult material. It wouldn't benefit his education whatsoever. I would like to propose that there's probably a very small percentage of students that actually turn 18. When you look at the whole percentage, I was asking Mr. Merkel, what percent of students in the high school are 18? Obviously, we're going to probably narrow it down to almost all seniors. There might be a handful otherwise. Only seniors, and only some of them. My kids will both be 17 when they graduate, so not even all seniors will be 18. Would there not be a way that if this material has to be in the library, that we have an adult or a pornography or whatever section you want to call it, that it is under lock and key, and you have to either, one, be 18 or have parental consent to have access to that, versus trying to take the majority of students and monitor what can they or what can't they have access to, or for me to know what are they checking out or what are they not checking out. Why are the adult content, mature books, not required to have a parental consent to check them out? I feel like it would be so much easier because most of our students are not 18. So unless you are, if you're under 18 and you were to have some type of parental consent, great, check it out. Your parent's okay with that. But for the rest of the parents that aren't okay with that, I know that my child wouldn't have access to it. Is he going to check out Milk and Honey? Absolutely not. But will his friends grab it off the shelf and giggle at the pictures? Probably. They're 14-year-old boys. They aren't looking for the deeper meaning necessarily in all of these books. And I just don't feel that we need to sacrifice their innocence or their childhood before it's necessary, because it doesn't do anything to benefit them academically. And I would really like to consider some type of restrictive process on the adult-rated books. Oh, one more thing, in regards to the parade. God bless Rosie Coral for being the only teacher that walked in that parade. She is a treasure, and there is a reason that she is revered and highly requested by all parents, and I hope everybody recognizes what a great teacher she is.
Next up, Tessa Jansma, followed by Janine.
Guys, my name's Tessa Jansma. It was April 25th when I sat down with our high school principal to discuss the removal of just 2 out of the many books that have sexually explicit matter in them. It was the beginning of June when I received the letter stating that the committee chose to keep the book Milk and Honey in our school. And it took until today, July 18th, to finally hear your vote on my appeal. Why? Why does a book review take 3 months? There will be more coming. The book Milk and Honey is rated for adult-only content. It's for children. No child under 18 should have access to Milk and Honey. And yet we have the 2015 version and we were graced with the 2018 version. So it wasn't that long ago that that book was put in there. The second books committee for Crank by Ellen Hopkins, I'll be very interested to hear your guys' opinion on that one. I'm sure there's artistic something to keep it. This is crazy that I'm even having this talk with you guys. This is disgusting. They won't meet until July 26th. Again, 3 months later. I don't understand it. Is this going to be the same committee minus the random parents that get chose, that did Milk and Honey, chose to keep it? Do you read every book and review it this thoroughly before you allow it into our schools? Probably not. Somehow we have hundreds of books with the interest level for adult. We have 13, 14, 15-year-old kids in that library. Are we going to get a beaded section like Blockbuster? This is school. This is school. We're supposed to make our kids want to go to the library. Now I got to tell them just stay away from it because it's disgusting. Do you guys go by awards only, or does anybody look it over? Probably not. Watching this push to sexualize our children has been disturbing, to say the least. But just know we see you. And we, the parents, we say, not today, Satan, not today. One good thing about all this is the parents have awakened, myself included. I know Roger said that the books have been in there for a long time and there's so many books. We trusted you. We trusted this school district to not give our children access to pornography. Here we are. We have come together and formed a group to fight against this indoctrination and sexualization of our children. Grandville Parents for Education has been born. We are a group of parents, grandparents, and community members dedicated to the well-being of our children, and we will not sit idly by as this continues. I almost knew you guys were going to vote to keep it. And I was going to prepare a whole different one if you took it out. But it's just very interesting you guys voted to keep it. We'll be looking into that. On another note, not to just go on the books, but I called it months ago. The election variant was coming. I told you it was coming. Study after study has proven the mask to be worthless. And if you even think about reinstating those pointless mask mandates again, just know you will be met with resistance. And this time from a well-organized group of parents who are willing to lose it all to protect their kids from this stupidity. I hope you guys realize what you did tonight. Be ready to read a ton more books, because we have quite the selection of porn, rape, drugs, sex. This is what we're giving our kids. Grandville needs to fix it. This is disgusting. Thank you.
Last speaker will be Janine Jantema.
miss you guys. Okay, my name's Janine Jansma. You have my address on file. So, you know, it's really something where we're at these days. And that we even are requiring a consensual, administrative, and public, selective public to do a vote on whether pornography is appropriate to have in the school library shelves. It's highly concerning, and quite frankly, it's preposterous. Especially when the books themselves state on the cover that they are for an 18-year and over audience, as does Milk and Honey. And you know in high school, you got 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th grade. Probably not a whole lot of those kids are 18 or over. You know, you're like really skating, verging on breaking the law, in my opinion. That weeks are required to make this decision, it defies common sense. It may sound like I stray from the issue at hand in the examples I share, but I ask you to remember that we have watched and lived through what happens when an idea or an ideology is let to run rampant with no checks or balances. I'm sure we all remember the infamous promise touted 2.5 years ago, 2 weeks to flatten the curve. I bring this up because nothing happens by accident, and the long, slow walk to the sexualization of our children isn't as slow as you may think. The perversion that has seeped into our society is eroding the sacred trust that caring for children requires. Normalizing and even encouraging sexual materials and gender confusion in the young is to default on that trust. The promotion and accessibility of sexually charged material, along with the graphic imagery in these books, is inappropriate and irresponsible. Schools are here to educate our children in reading, writing, math, music, the arts, and sports. The purview of education is to prepare children for a happy and productive and well-educated future as adults. It is a sane and safe environment that produces well-adjusted, confident, and capable citizens. We are, once again, seeing a resurgence in the push for mask mandates. Tyrannical government officials are at it again, doing what they do best, using fear to fool the masses. They can call it what they want. They can call it monkeypox. They can call it COVID, but we know its real name. It's called the election variant. And those who still think that the issues we face today are anything less than the battle between good and evil are deceiving themselves. To the board tonight, I beseech you to remember why you are here. You were appointed your positions to protect, to serve, to honor, and to respect the children in your care. Let our kids be kids.
1 minute.
Thank you. The next workshop board meeting of the Grandville Board of Education will be on Monday, August 1st, 2022 at 7 p.m. here at the Administration Building. This meeting is adjourned.